On the day I was kicked out by my CEO boyfriend, I directly booked a plane ticket back to my hometown. My parents back home had finally forgiven me, their unfilial daughter, and planned for me to return and live a simple, ordinary life. After returning home, my best friend sat across from me. "Can you really let go of that CEO of yours? Didn't you say you were deeply in love with him, that no one else would do?" I casually stuffed a piece of dessert into my mouth, nonchalantly took out my phone, and showed the 10 million balance on my bank card. "Do you still tell the truth in front of your boss? If it weren't for the fact that he has some money, and I could get quite a bit out of him, who would want to put up with his spoiled young master's bad habits? If you ask me, I should have run away earlier." But unexpectedly, before I could finish speaking, I met a pair of bloodshot eyes. "Come on, come home with me." Having just finished a day of high-intensity work, even with my good spirits, I felt a bit tired. Ever since Leo inherited the position of chairman of the Lin family a month ago, he had become increasingly unpretentious. Dumping all the company work on me was one thing, but he insisted on eating meals I personally cooked 3 times a day. This made me run between home and the company all day long, without a moment's rest. Regarding my complaints, Leo didn't care at all. Instead, he beautified it by saying, "Baby, isn't it because I love you? I can't do without you." I shook my head, thinking of Leo's noble face full of infatuation for me, and the day's fatigue lightened a bit. Even if he was a jerk, I was willing to indulge him. There was no way around it. I loved him, and I knew he loved me too. Moreover, he had already promised me that we would get married next month. Although he hadn't formally proposed yet, in my heart, he was already my husband. I glanced at the fresh meat and vegetables in my hand, adjusted my mood, and was about to find the key to open the door when I realized it wasn't locked. I smiled faintly. Perfect, I could give that useless young master a surprise. As I quietly squeezed through the door crack, I realized our home seemed to have a guest. A pair of red high heels was placed at the door, not mine. And at that moment, sounds of intimacy between a man and a woman were coming from our bedroom. This apartment was a 2-bedroom that Leo had specially prepared for my convenience in commuting to work. Besides us, no one else could be there. I was struck as if by lightning, frozen in place. A bad thought appeared in my mind. I quickly cut off my wild thoughts. No, it couldn't be. Leo wasn't that kind of person. He had sworn to me. He said he would only love me. I quietly approached the bedroom, but my heart sank to the bottom. The man's voice inside, I could never mistake it. It was Leo. He had cheated. I struggled to control my body from fainting, unwilling to give up, and pushed the door open a crack. As expected, the man on the bed was Leo, and the other person was also someone I remembered vividly. Cecilia, the daughter of the Chi family, was the good sister from the Elders family in Leo's words, and also our company's executive vice president. "I say, Leo, you've been holding back for a long time, huh? What? Your relationship with the one at home isn't that good anymore?" Cecilia looked at Leo playfully. And Leo just casually lit a cigarette. His gaze toward Cecilia was full of indulgence. "Grace? I've long gotten tired of her, otherwise, I wouldn't have come to you, right?" So, he was tired of me? I remembered yesterday, when I hugged him with stirring desires, what he said to me. "You've worked hard, it's so late, and I have to make you do this, I can't bear it." At that time, I even sighed that Leo was a rare good man, always thinking of me. But now, looking back, it wasn't that he couldn't bear it, but that he was annoyed with me. "Then why don't you dump her? Be with me openly?" Cecilia coquettishly shook Leo's arm, while the latter's face was full of evasion. "Sooner or later, after all, we are the ones who are well matched. It's just that a free and satisfactory nanny isn't that easy to find. Give me some time." At that moment, all the accumulated fatigue hit me, pressing me until I couldn't breathe. I then realized that physical fatigue from work was nothing compared to emotional exhaustion. Coincidentally, I remembered the message my mom sent yesterday. She said Dad was getting old and missed me. Dad wasn't in good health and was going to be hospitalized recently. When he was under anesthesia, he was still calling my name. When I was young and ignorant, I'd always felt my parents controlled me too much and wanted to marry far away from home. At this moment, I realized how much I missed home. I suddenly realized that in this city, I had no friends, no life of my own, I only had work and Leo. But now, he didn't want me anymore. I didn't disturb Leo, I just silently took a photo with my phone of him and Cecilia embracing on the bed. Ridiculously, even this bed was one I had chosen. Leo had said at the time, used to sleeping on Simmons, this hard wooden bed is quite interesting, indeed, with me, even in plain life, he is very happy. He also said that I was different from those family misses, I was always down to earth, willing to work, never idle for a moment. These good qualities were something he had never seen. He said having a wife like me was his honor. Unfortunately, I now realized that not a single word he said was true. It turned out I had been doing a nanny's job all along. Would he disregard social status to marry me? How could that be possible? I quietly walked out but accidentally stepped on Cecilia's high heels. "Who's there?" A panicked voice sounded, and immediately, rustling sounds of dressing came from inside. "Who's there? Who's outside?" Leo's voice came from the room. I subconsciously wanted to run, but suddenly, I couldn't. Why should I run? Although Leo said he wanted to buy this house for me, I refused at the time, and it was bought with my savings. This house, this home, is mine. "Grace, why are you back?" When Leo saw me, he was surprised. After all, I was always punctual and never left early. According to routine, at this time I should be at the company. "Aren't you off work yet? Why are you back?" He guiltily glanced at the inner room. I smiled self-mockingly, so he was still afraid I'd see. But I could only force a bitter smile. I came back to get files. The words of accusation ultimately couldn't be said. 10 years of consistent care had made me lose the ability to speak harshly to this man. Seeing this, Leo breathed a sigh of relief, but his hand still partially covered the bedroom door. Both he and I knew there was something unsightly in that room. I pretended not to care, glanced at the inner room, and tentatively asked, "When I came in just now, I seemed to hear sounds from the room, is someone there?" Leo mumbled, guiltily glancing at the bedroom. "You might have misheard, it's just you and me in the room." But at that moment, the bedroom door opened by itself. Cecilia walked out from the bedroom, nonchalantly adjusting her clothes. She looked at me provocatively. "Yo, why are you back?" "Leo told me you wouldn't be back today." Snap. The bag in my hand fell to the ground, various vegetables scattering everywhere. In the end, I couldn't hold back, tears fell like broken strings. He had clearly said he would only love me. But he lied. Seeing this, I could no longer pretend nothing happened. I looked at Leo, clearly in extreme grief, but my tone was extremely flat. "Shouldn't you give me an explanation?" Leo half opened his mouth but didn't speak for a long time. Instead, Cecilia spoke first. "I say, enough, for an ordinary person like you to hook up with Leo is already a rare blessing. What are you still unsatisfied about?" "Actually, Leo, you probably don't know yet, your virtuous helper here dared to embezzle company funds behind your back. I heard it was a full 200,000. After hearing this, Leo's originally apologetic eyes suddenly became sharp. "Grace, is what Cecilia said true? Didn't I tell you not to touch the company's money recklessly?" In an instant, an inexplicable anger spread in my mind. Yes, I did have the finance department transfer a sum to me, which I sent to my mother because my dad needed that money for surgery. But this money could only be considered what the company owed me. I managed everything for Leo at the company and took care of his daily life. He never proactively gave me a penny, and of course, I never asked him for it. The class difference made me fearful deep down. I was afraid that if I asked, he would think I was materialistic. I had been at the company for a full 5 years, even at the intern's salary in the department, it would have exceeded 200,000 long ago. Asking him for this money, I had a clear conscience. "Leo, have you ever thought that over these years, am I only worth 200,000? Don't I even have the right to dispose of this money?" Seeing me angry, Leo's tone immediately softened. But you should have told me, after all, we are family. Family? Ridiculous. Thinking carefully, when did we ever count as family? Was it my daily hard work for him, or carefully preparing 3 meals a day? Or when I hugged him, wanting intimacy, and he said that sentence. You're very tired today, don't bother. Between us, there seemed to be little of the joys that belong to a family. What there was piles of work and my one-sided efforts. When his parents were unwell, I had to care for them like a servant. But when my family was sick. From the time we got together, Leo never once proactively offered to accompany me home to visit. Even when I recently learned my dad had a serious illness, and I asked him for the first time if he could accompany me, he just looked troubled. You know the company is busy, I can't get away. At the time, although I felt wronged, I still defended him in my heart. After all, he was in a high position with his own difficulties. But now, looking back? What reason couldn't he get away? There was only that he didn't care. Leo, let's break up. No. Leo refused very straightforwardly, which surprised me a bit. I thought he just couldn't save face, so even though he didn't have me in his heart, he still kept me by his side. But I had no intention of bargaining with him. I should have realized long ago that he and I were not the same kind of people. Leo, we're just dating. Breaking up doesn't require both parties' agreement. Moreover, you're the one at fault, you have no right to retain me. If I were you, I would proactively let go, giving each other dignity. But Leo hesitated. In these 10 years of living like husband and wife, this was the first time I saw such an expression on his face. He was like an innocent child who lost his favorite toy. I smiled self-mockingly. Yes, to Leo, I was just an old toy he was familiar with and reluctant to throw away. Ridiculously, I had once hoped to stay by his side for a lifetime. Cecilia clapped her hands intoxicatedly, as if she had watched a good show. Grace, I have to say, your acting is really good. She glanced at me disdainfully, then turned to Leo with a gentle face. Leo, don't be fooled by her. Who in the company doesn't know she's a miser, practically fallen into the money pit? I can't remember how many times she refused to join company gatherings and asked finance to just give her cash instead. I don't believe she's really that noble, not after a penny of yours. I remained silent. I didn't go to company gatherings simply because Leo's control over me was maxed out. He absolutely forbade me from attending events with the opposite sex. As for cashing out, that was true. After all, the company didn't pay me a penny, and my part-time income had to pay the mortgage, so I had to save where I could. However, I didn't plan to explain. Whatever Leo thought was fine, I just wanted to break up with him. Leo trembled his lips and tentatively asked, Grace, is what Cecilia said true? Are you with me for my money? I coldly curled my lips, my eyes full of mockery. 10 years of daily companionship couldn't compare to an outsider's gossip. What more could I say? Leo, I would like to be after your money, but have you ever given any? Think what you want, just assume I've had ulterior motives these 10 years, and let's part ways here. I turned and walked away without a trace of reluctance. My heart ached to the point of difficulty breathing, but each step I took was exceptionally firm. I was reluctant to let go of the love from these 10 years, but I also knew that if I forgave, if I shamelessly refused to leave, what would be crushed was my own dignity. In life, there are always things more important than love. Grace! Don't go. Leo called from behind, but though his voice was so close, for the first time I felt he was so far away. In relationships, not everything can be forgiven. Some things, once they happen, mean it's ultimately missed. Behind me came the sound of Leo's leather shoes running toward me, but in the end, he stopped not far behind. My steps paused. For a moment, I had hope. Would Leo repent to me, beg me not to go? I wasn't sure. If he retained me, could I really leave so decisively? But when he opened his mouth, it was ultimately disillusionment. Grace, can't you be a bit more mature? For people of our status, having a mistress isn't a big deal. Cecilia and I aren't as simple as you think, you know our families have marriage alliances. But I can promise you, I won't marry her. The wife's position, I'll only reserve for you. Cecilia has agreed too. As long as I can have marital relations with her, she's willing to step back. Even a young miss like her is willing. What are you still dissatisfied with? What am I still dissatisfied with? Yes, the man I regarded as my husband cheating with another woman, and I have to be grateful? If this is the world of the rich, then sorry, blame me for not understanding. Seeing my steps didn't stop, Leo frowned. Grace, you know my temper, I'll say this only once. I've already explained the reason to you. If you still insist on leaving, I won't retain you, and I absolutely won't proactively find you. After saying this, Leo's tone softened, with a bit of coaxing as he continued. Of course, if you're willing to act as if nothing happened and stay by my side, I'll buy you a villa, registered in your name, and give you another 5 million, as compensation for these years. I turned my head, trying hard to find a trace of guilt on Leo's face, but there was none. What there was his faint arrogance. Perhaps he thought I was just one of the many who flattered him, and for his generous compensation I should be grateful. But I had had enough. I had enough of this playhouse life in the wealthy family, and enough of Leo's young master temper. In life, money isn't everything. Fine, I hope you keep your word and don't come find me. Seeing me unmoved, Leo panicked for the first time. At this moment, he finally believed I was really leaving him. But before he could act, Cecilia hugged him. Leo, she's just playing hard to get, don't fall for it. I've seen many women like her. The reason she won't forgive you is just that she thinks you gave too little. If you pay attention to her, she'll demand even more. You and I both know Grace's nature. She can't leave you, now, she's just pretending. Besides, even if she really leaves, she's the one who loses. Someone like you deserves better. Don't act like an ordinary person troubled by love, losing face for the Lynn family. Looking at Cecilia's affected face, Leo felt annoyed for the first time. But only one sentence stuck in his ears: she can't leave you. Yes, over these 10 years, how much Grace loved him, he had always known deep down. Yes, she can't leave me. Leaving our home, for the first time, I felt this vast city had no place for me. As I wandered aimlessly in the city, someone unexpected called out to me. Child, let's talk. It was Leo's mother, Margaret, whom I had regarded as my mother-in-law. Her health wasn't great, and over these years, I had taken care of her a lot. Mom. Coming back to my senses, I suddenly remembered that Leo and I had broken up. Aunt Margaret, you're looking for me? Aunt Margaret looked at me with pity. For a moment, I really wanted to throw myself into her arms and cry. 10 years isn't short. Enough for one to treat a stranger elder as their own mother. But 10 years isn't long either, enough for one to go from true love to betrayal. I just heard. Hearing what had happened from her mouth again, I was surprisingly calm. My grievances, my unwillingness, seemed to disappear. I then realized that no one can't live without someone else. Do you really plan to leave Leo? On Aunt Margaret's face, I saw many expressions: reluctance, self-blame, but more, it seemed like relief. Actually, I'm quite satisfied with you, if not for your ordinary background, and now the Lynn family has some problems and needs the Chi family's support. Aunt Margaret didn't finish, but the meaning was clear to me. Leo and I weren't the same kind. I couldn't shield him from any storms. We were never possible. However, in the end, he was at fault first. Only today did I learn that this child never proactively spent a penny on you in 10 years. Aunt Margaret sighed and pushed over a bank card. There's 5 million in the card, consider it my compensation to you. I subconsciously wanted to refuse. Someone inherently inferior always fears receiving favors. But on second thought, I had wasted 10 years, now I'm not young, and I should consider my future and my parents' retirement. Moreover, for my efforts over these 10 years, I deserved it. Thank you. Seeing me accept, Aunt Margaret nodded approvingly. But then she seemed to think of something difficult, hesitating. Aunt Margaret, just say it, Leo and I have completely broken up, no need to consider my face anymore, nor worry that I'll cling on. Looking at the bank card in my hand, I smiled self-mockingly. How could I not know what this card meant for me? The card is for you, but you have to leave tonight. I booked a private plane for you. You know Leo's nature. I'm afraid he'll cling to you and not let you go. For a moment, we were silent with each other. It was just a simple okay, but it felt like I said it for a century. Unbelievable that the once lifetime promise of one pair for life would end so cleanly after 10 years. About the company. There were still many affairs I hadn't handled at the company, not that I wanted to work for Leo anymore, but I didn't want to take responsibility. Aunt Margaret smiled gently. Don't worry, I'll handle all that for you. In this city, my life was simple. Besides Leo, it was the Lin family's company. Since both were severed, what was there for me to linger over? Thinking of Leo, of the 10 years of daily toil, and then of my parents' loving faces, the familiar scenery and food of my hometown. My originally gloomy mood suddenly brightened. I was leaving, I was going home. In the bar, Leo changed batch after batch of drinks on the counter. And Cecilia stood stunned beside him, full of worry. Leo, it's not worth it, just a low-class woman, don't you still have me? Leo glanced at Cecilia, raised his glass, and drank it in one gulp. If you insist on slandering Grace in front of me, then you can get lost. Cecilia's eyes reddened from Leo's rude words, but she just struggled and stomped her feet, ultimately not leaving. I say, I have a way to make her change her mind, do you want to hear it? Leo, like a drowning man grasping a lifesaver, his face full of hope. Really? Cecilia chuckled, her eyes full of certainty. I said, I've seen many women like her. I don't believe she can bear to leave you, that she's really willing to go. Just off the plane, my legs were still a bit weak. After all, I rarely flew, and a private plane was a first. Yo! Whose unlucky egg parked the plane on my drying field? You have to compensate, you know? Looking at the middle-aged woman rushing out aggressively from the house, I couldn't help but laugh, but laughing turned to crying. Mom! Yo! Daughter's back. The woman's iron shovel dropped to the ground with a snap. After 10 years apart, I finally returned to the people who loved me most. Watching the private plane disappear in the distance, I finally confirmed one thing, I had returned to my reality. Dad, where's Dad? I looked at my mother with tears in her eyes, thinking of another person who cared for Grace. Dad was always strong in my impression. If he said he missed me, he must be seriously ill. Your dad, he's inside. But mentioning Dad, my mom's face showed some unnaturalness. I rushed panic-stricken to the inner room, thinking Dad's illness was too severe, so Mom didn't dare tell me. But unexpectedly, as I burst in, I saw my dear Dad holding a wine bowl and cracking melon seeds, his face ruddy, not looking sick at all. When Dad saw it was me coming in, the wine bowl in his hand snapped to the ground. Yo, daughter, why are you back without saying in advance? Peter. I want an explanation. After a long while, I finally understood the reason for my parents' trembling explanations. It turned out the old couple missed me too much and came up with this on a whim. I was both happy and sad, happy that Dad was fine, sad that as their only daughter, I was too irresponsible, making the honest old couple act and lie to see me. At this moment, I seemed to understand the weight of these 10 years. It turned out that the one who wasted 10 years wasn't just me. To change the topic, Mom's eyes lit up. Right, that plane just now was your son-in-law's, right? You're back, when will you invite him home for us to see? You're not young anymore, it's time to settle down early. Suddenly mentioning Leo, my eyes dimmed. Leo and I broke up. In these 2 days at home, my parents always acted as if nothing happened in front of me and no longer mentioned Leo. I knew they were afraid I'd be sad. But their concerns seemed unnecessary, I adapted well. Everything in my hometown was good, and no one would remind me of him. Just when I thought we would never contact again, I received a 5 million transfer message on my phone. This 5 million is compensation for your 10 years, if possible. Welcome to attend my wedding with Cecilia next month, Leo. I couldn't help counting on my fingers. In just 1 month, Leo was already marrying Cecilia. Ridiculously, in these 10 years, I mentioned marriage more than 100 times. He always said that for big families like theirs, marriage required a long time to prepare and wasn't easy. But now? 10 years couldn't compare to their 1 month, as long as statuses matched. Where were all the difficulties? But this was fine, emotions were barren, but at least I didn't leave empty-handed. Looking at the 5 million transfer, I thought and still replied, I won't attend the wedding, wish you happiness. I sighed, looked at the old couple flirting in the yard, and for the first time felt some loneliness. I probably said the happiest words for my parents this month. Mom, those blind date candidates you mentioned, I want to meet them. Leo couldn't help refreshing his phone again and again. Until the battery died, he finally confirmed that Grace only replied that one message. No crying, no retaining, not even questioning, just a formulaic blessing. Leo felt empty inside. Only in this month of Grace's disappearance did he truly realize how important she was. Leo furiously pushed open the office door. Cecilia was humming a tune responding to Facebook blessings. Seeing Leo come in, she just smiled coquettishly. Ouch, why such a big temper, who provoked you again? Leo slammed the phone on the desk. Didn't you say she would change her mind? What's this about? Cecilia just picked up the phone, glanced, and sneered. No wonder she could enchant you, seems her level is high. Don't worry, this is just playing hard to get. I don't believe when she sees the wedding scene with her own eyes, she'll remain unmoved. Leo felt something was off no matter how he thought, but he was certain Grace could never leave him, even if she was really after money, he was willing. As long as Grace was willing to come back. You better really understand her, or wait and see. Cecilia watched the furious Leo leave, her face changing. But after a while, she laughed to herself. Whether I understand her or not, as long as you marry me. Mom, this one doesn't want anyone over 30. I just returned from a blind date and angrily threw my shawl on the sofa. Not intentionally angry at Mom, but these blind date objects were too bizarre. This one was already over 40, limiting the woman to under 30. And the previous one, no bride price, fine, I don't lack that. No job himself, fine, as long as he's ambitious and willing to change, I can support him. But this rare normal-looking one actually demanded I have 3 children in 2 years, saying he's the only child in his family and needs to continue the line. So, men in this small city treat women as wounds? I have tens of millions in assets, do I need to suffer this? Mom looked at me full of self-blame. TSK. This was your great aunt saying it was a good match, so I let you go. That old hag, Grace, calm down. Looking at the wrinkles on Mom's face, my anger faded. I knew she was urging me to marry now because they're old. They don't want me to be alone in old age. Honestly, I'm not against marriage. From childhood, I fantasized about someone accompanying me for life, growing old together. Otherwise, I couldn't have been strung along by Leo for 10 years. But marriage and family aren't easy. Mom, can I not go on blind dates? I'll just stay with you and Dad forever, and we'll live well like this. Mom looked at my teary eyes and nodded. But when she saw the sudden message on her phone, she excitedly called out. Yo! This one's good, really good. Just go on one more, if this fails too, we won't push you anymore. I sighed, at least I got her promise, so I'll let her have her way one more time. 3 days later, at the coffee shop. As I sat with exquisite makeup, waiting for the blind date to arrive, an unexpected person appeared before me. Ethan, my high school class president and my crush. He was the kid from the neighbor's house in my childhood. From elementary to high school, we attended the same school. But he was always shining, excelling in morals, intellect, physique, aesthetics, and labor, always the other people's child in parents' mouths. Honestly, I started crushing on him from elementary school, but on the surface, we were childhood sweethearts, yet he never got close to me, even more distant than to strangers. In short, we were from 2 worlds. As I hesitated whether to greet him, Ethan spoke. Grace, is that you? I nodded in surprise. I didn't expect him to remember me. He looked at the empty chair opposite me, hesitating. Is someone there? Can I sit? For a moment, I thought of my blind date, but the next second, I forgot about him. No matter who, compared to my white moonlight, they weren't worth mentioning. Looking at Ethan's sharp brows and starry eyes, I was stunned. In my memory, he seemed unchanged, still so gentle and elegant, like a favored child bathed in holy light, shining brightly. Seeing me daze, he coughed lightly. I immediately came back to senses and smiled apologetically. Unexpectedly, seeing my childhood white moonlight made me lose composure. How embarrassing. But no way around it, he influenced me too deeply. I initially fell for Leo because he resembled Ethan a bit. What are you doing here? I quickly changed the topic to save face. Ethan looked at me strangely. I thought your purpose was the same as mine. I'm here for a blind date. Hearing my childhood male god was on a blind date, I felt inexplicably lost inside. People always have strange possessiveness. Oh, has she arrived? Then hurry and sit aside, she'll overthink later. As I thought how stunning Ethan's blind date must be, sneakily searching back and forth in the empty coffee shop, Ethan looked straight at me. She's already here. Holding on until Ethan sent me home and closed the bedroom door. I then excitedly howled. I originally thought after leaving Leo, I could only find an ordinary person to spend the rest of my life with. But heaven sent my unattainable white moonlight right to me. How could I not be excited? But after the excitement, I couldn't help but have a doubt. Wait, why me? This doubt remained unsolved until a month later. This month, although we hadn't officially started, our exchanges were unexpectedly soul-matching. My favorite songs, he could recite, my favorite celebrity gossip, he knew inside out, my favorite dishes, he handled with ease. He seemed to know everything about me, as if it was all in a dream, as if heaven was compensating me for the 10 years of hard care for Leo. Being carefully cared for like this for a month, probably anyone would fall head over heels for this perfect man. Moreover, he was my white moonlight. But everything seemed stuck at the last step. Even though Ethan hinted again and again, wanting to confirm the relationship, I always pretended not to understand. Why was I hesitating? Why should I hesitate? As I puzzled over it, I found the answer from someone who could be considered a friend from work. Tomorrow is CEO Leo's wedding, will you attend? Along with that message came a video. In the frame, Leo with red eyes, downing glass after glass of red wine. Someone asked him, marrying such a perfect partner as Cecilia, what was he still unsatisfied with? Leo shed a tear. No matter how good she is, she's not her. If she comes tomorrow, I'll definitely go with her. This time, I won't let her be sad again. If he didn't say, I'd forget, Leo's wedding is tomorrow. Who sent this message and video was obvious. Leo was always like this. Every time he made me angry, he used his connections to indirectly make me forgive. But every time, he wouldn't face the problem, wouldn't look at his mistakes. That not close friend continued asking. Leo's getting married tomorrow, do you have any response? I thought and typed a few words. I do, but need your help. After ending the conversation, I suddenly felt enlightened. I understood that Leo and I were completely over. No need to punish myself with others' mistakes. I met the wrong person, gave 10 years of true heart to a rotten person. But he would never change, he would make mistakes again sooner or later. Why must I ignore the happiness in front of me and insist on staying in the mud pit for life? I thought and finally dialed someone's number. Hey, date? There was a pause, tone with restrained excitement. Date. Has she come? Leo looked at the butler, full of hope. Today, the hall was full of guests, people from high cities business and political circles all came. But Leo still didn't see the person he most wanted to see. The butler shook his head. But when the butler picked up the gift list to check, he exclaimed in surprise. Young master, Miss Grace didn't come, but she had someone bring a gift. Leo's vision blackened, almost fainting. Everyone understood the meaning of sending a gift to an ex, it often meant completely letting go. But Leo didn't believe. He didn't believe Grace would really let go. Yes. This must be her hint. Thinking this, Leo grasped at straws. How much did she send? The butler swallowed and still said it. 300, what? Just 300? Leo paused, looking puzzled at the butler. You say she sent 300, is she hinting that 3 million would make us reconcile? The butler scratched his head and finally said what he thought. Probably not. Miss Grace sending 300 is like ordinary company employees, just sending 300 as a token. What? Leo pushed through one after another toasting guest, heading straight to Cecilia's makeup room. Didn't you say you understand her? Why didn't she come? Leo swept the cosmetics on Cecilia's table to the ground, where was the demeanor of a noble son. Cecilia remained silent, carefully finishing the last bit of makeup in the mirror, then slowly spoke. I don't understand her, isn't that normal? She and I are from two worlds, her not retaining you is her loss. Leo, I also don't understand you, when you were affectionate with me, you didn't think of her? Why are you angry at me now? What, all my fault? Seeming to feel her words too sharp, Cecilia softened her tone. All right, guests are here today, this is our most important day, don't forget our statuses. If you want to make a fuss, do it tomorrow. Today, you're mine, okay? Looking at Cecilia's pleading expression, Leo just smiled cruelly. I should have known you were playing me, you think this way I'll marry you? Dream on. Leo said while taking off his wedding suit and throwing it to the ground. Cecilia, in this lifetime, I can never be with you. In my heart, only Grace. You just started dating like that. Best friend Chloe clapped, face full of confusion. Why do all good things happen to you? I scratched my head, I don't know. Maybe because I love life and am kind-hearted. I glanced at my phone, yesterday was Leo's wedding, naturally a grand event in High City, topics filling front pages. But it seemed not perfect. Reports said Leo ran away from the wedding, tabloids had videos of Cecilia sitting on the ground howling. But what does it have to do with me? Rarely in good mood, I gulped 2 more sips of drink. Seeing me absent-minded, Chloe suddenly wore a mysterious smile. I say, can you really let go of that CEO boyfriend? Before, didn't you say you'd marry no one but him, recognized him for life? Chloe didn't know what happened between Leo and me, I didn't plan to tell people around. After all, those days, better not mentioned. I pretended not to care, shrugged, and opened my 10 million balance account. Do you still tell the truth in front of the boss? I've got what I want, naturally run early, who loves indulging that young master temper. As I ranted about Leo, Chloe swallowed and pointed behind me. Grace, the one behind you seems to be looking for you. I turned, meeting Leo's red eyes, stubbly beard. Tears in his eyes, face full of confusion. Am I that bad? Without thinking, my heart's words came out. Yes. He once hurt me, now hurts Cecilia, he always only thinks of himself, isn't that bad enough? Leo lowered his head, after a while squeezing out, come, go home with me. I'll change. He reached out to me, I coldly slapped his hand away. Leo, enough, I think my previous words were clear, we're completely over, and I. Before I finished, Leo roughly grabbed my hand. Don't say it. I don't want to hear. Today you must come with me. No one can help. Chloe hurriedly stepped forward to block, but was pushed aside by irrational Leo. I wanted to check Chloe's injuries, but Leo's hand was like pliers, making me unable to struggle. Have them prepare the plane, today I'm taking her back to High City. Leo instructed the nearby butler, ignoring me beating and cursing him beside. I advise you to calm down, think of your family, your friends, I have 10,000 ways to make you submit. Leo's 2 sentences chilled me to the bone. He was threatening me, but I couldn't muster any resistance, I knew he wasn't lying, and he really could manipulate me easily. I just felt regret, I was so close to happiness, but he could easily drag me away. Just as I resigned, a steady male voice that reassured me sounded from behind the door. I advise you to let her go. Ethan. I excitedly called out, but seeing Leo like he wanted to eat someone, I urgently called. Don't mind me. Let me handle this myself. I didn't want others hurt because of me, especially someone who loved me. But Ethan acted as if he didn't hear, calmly walking in. He first smiled at me to reassure, then looked at astonished Leo, raising an eyebrow. Talk? I didn't understand what Ethan and Leo had to talk about, but the originally arrogant Leo suddenly lost his anger, even loosening his grip on my hand. I took the chance to push Leo away, first checked Chloe's injuries, seeing she was fine, I supported her to Ethan's side. By his side, I always felt especially safe. I originally thought they'd have a fierce argument, but no, they just went to a side room and came out in a few minutes. Leo regained reason, bowed to apologize to me. But his gaze was still burning. I indeed can't compare to you now, but if Grace chooses me, I hope you respect her decision. In my impression, this was the first time Leo thought he couldn't compare to someone. This aroused my curiosity, but before I could figure it out, Leo knelt before me. Grace, I really know I was wrong. This month I never ate a proper meal or slept a peaceful night. I can't do without you. Please, please forgive me. I promise, I'll transfer the company to you, hold a century wedding for you. After marriage, we can travel the world, as long as you want, as long as I have, all for you. Leo said a lot intermittently. The future he depicted was happy enough, my fantasized beauty. Honestly, I still had lingering feelings for Leo. I hadn't completely forgotten him. If I agreed, everything was within reach, but I just didn't want it. What was I still obsessed with? Leo had flaws, but no one is perfect. Why? I thought again and understood. I wasn't wrong, even if Leo promised to change. Some things wrong are wrong, irreparable. After all, it concerns dignity. And a person without dignity can never hold their head up in a relationship, doomed to fail. As I struggled, Ethan extended his hand to me. Whatever decision you make is fine, as long as you're happy, I'll support you. His eyes had unconcealed loss, as if I'd leave him next moment. Snap, the stone in my heart fell instantly. At this moment, I finally understood. I found my home. I firmly looked at Leo. I've said it several times, we're completely over. Then I naturally gripped Ethan's hand. Moreover, I found better. If you insist on entangling, I'll accompany to the end. As I calculated the dirt on Leo's company in my mind, thinking how to protect Ethan and family, Leo unexpectedly nodded. Okay, I know. At this moment, he was utterly broken, as if losing the world. My heart ached inexplicably. This wasn't about love, just mourning the past beauty. That person who once had eyes only for me, willing to pick stars and moon for me, was gone forever. I waited and waited, but Leo's revenge never came. Instead, I heard Leo was expelled from the Lin family, and Cecilia married the new Lin young master. Until the day I married Ethan, I finally noticed something off about all this. I looked at my groom, full of suspicion. I say, Ethan, are you hiding something from me? Ethan winked at me. Seems he really had a ghost in his heart. I originally thought I could hide it longer. Ethan casually chatted with me for an hour. He started from entering top university, then how he dropped out during graduate school to enter business, how he expanded his empire step by step, becoming the behind-the-scenes controller of High City's business world. His resume was always brilliant, like himself now. I squinted, confirming he wasn't bragging. Seeing he wasn't joking, I understood why he could handle Leo so easily. But then I had another doubt. Why did you stop research and go into business? He looked straight at me, making my cheeks burn. Because that year, a fool said she wanted to marry into wealth. Oh, I remembered, that year I just started with Leo, happily got drunk at the bar, letting loose. And that year, Ethan mustered courage to confess to me. So, you've always been there? Ethan nodded. He said he apprenticed at my favorite hair salon, partnered with my favorite clothing store, even bought recipes from my loved street stalls to study. But he never dared appear in front of me, because from childhood, I was cold to him, seeming not to like him. No wonder he knew my preferences, he had been learning about me all these 10 years. At this moment, I was speechless. In his perspective, he crushed on me for over 20 years. For an instant, I suspected he hit his head and was talking nonsense. Then I suddenly thought of what Leo's mom said, Lin Industries had problems. You did it? He nodded awkwardly, looking worried. Will you blame me? I shook my head. No. A lover is for a lifetime. Without Ethan, Leo and I would have other problems. Since he betrayed so easily, he would sooner or later. I didn't tell you my identity, afraid you'd have too much burden, but rest assured, everything I have is yours. I don't want anything, I just want you. Looking at Ethan, I nodded. Okay, when to transfer to me? I carefully watched his expression, no hesitation. Okay. Damn, why? But I didn't really want it, but he really gave. Looking at the bank card, the countless balance belonging to me. I admit, now I'm truly at ease. Worth it? I asked. Ethan smiled. Worth it, anyway, I can't spend it all. Moreover, having you is enough.